What was the last thing you touched at night before going to bed and the first thing you touch in the morning? More often than not, the answer to this question is your smartphone. Today's workers suffer through an endless search of information to the point of unhealthy, unproductive bombardment. Connectivity is the new oxygen. In his new book, Information Bombardment, Rising Above the Digital Onslaught, award-winning professor and leading keynote speaker Nick Bontis offers tools to help modern workers manage their incessant thirst for data while avoiding being held hostage by digital devices. To talk more about this, of course, Mac professor and author of Information Bombardment, Rising Above the Digital Onslaught, is Nick Bontis, and he's with us now. Good afternoon, Nick. How are you today?
I'm doing great. How you doing?
Good. First of all, congratulations. Good for you.
Thanks. It's a big day. It's been a year in the making, so can't believe it finally arrived.
This sort of stuff rolls off your tongue like saliva. Was it difficult to write this book? And I'm thinking, my wife and I are constantly having this discussion, and it just amazes me how many times people will check their device while they're actually carrying on a conversation with you. And you can't tell me that everyone has vital information that they must see now.
Well, there's two ways to answer that question. The first way, with regards to the content of the book, absolutely, you're correct. I mean, it's a very, very easy topic to talk about. Everybody knows what I'm talking about. Lots of people have smartphones. Lots of people have emails accounts. People are, they suffer from phantom vibrations because their BlackBerry or their iPhone is not near them for a certain amount of time. So we know it's a very real issue. So, I mean, in terms of the topic itself, it's quite generalizable, and I've been getting a lot of feedback that people resonate with the topic. In terms of actually writing it or the process of writing it, it's been a very, very long journey. The topic was easy, but the actual process is difficult. And I'm also self-publishing the book, which just adds to the complexity of the issue.
How much of this is novelty versus really gathering vital information?
A lot of it has to do with the fact that because it's the network effect, because everybody else is doing it, you have to be part and parcel of the network, and that's why people don't like to remove themselves from the network. So if you're, for example, a BlackBerry user and you're using BlackBerry Messenger, in many cases you'll also get BlackBerry Messenger because a lot of your friends and colleagues are on that system. So again, the network effect causes you or forces you, in a sense, to actually create more bombardment for yourself. Employers also do this now. The promise of mobility. I mean, that's why employers purchased BlackBerries and iPhones and smartphones in many cases for their employees, because they said it's going to be easier for you to do your job when you're on the road. But what's happened now is that bosses and supervisors will email you at night or on the weekend or on vacation. So you have to carry your smartphone with you at those places for fear of not responding in a timely way. And same thing goes with customers. Once the customer knows that they can email you at Saturday at 3 in the morning and you're going to respond, well, then that customer's got you hooked.
Where do you draw the line?
Well, a lot of organizations are implementing new policies and plans. So, for example, some organizations I've been working with have what's called the 6 to 6. And basically what that means is that nobody is allowed to send an email between 6 p.m. and 6 a.m. So that solves a little bit of the problem when you're at home, let's say at 7:30 with your young kids, and you're supposed to be playing with your kids at home at night, and instead you're sitting there checking out your BlackBerry every 5 seconds for fear that one of your colleagues is sending you an email. If you know there's a policy in place where that can't happen, then you can, concentrate better on, that work-life balance.
But if you're a company, you're going to be looking for the competitive advantage, and if you know your competitor's only doing 6 to 6, the first thing you're going to do is start working after 6, no?
Well, and that's exactly the logic that we have been believing in for the last 10 years, that it's all about this 24-hour, 7 days a week type of connectivity. But here's the flip side to that argument, and it's called stress life, right? So you got information overload, you have anxiety, you have stress. People are dreaming of work at night. People are suffering from phantom vibrations. People are checking their BlackBerry while they're driving illegally in their car. Kids are noticing that you're more inclined to play with your BlackBerry than play with them. So there's all these negative repercussions. Some are physiological and some are mental, but they all have a negative detriment and a negative effect on productivity in the long run. So even though you think it's a competitive advantage to be connected 24/7, in the long run it actually might not. It might be the opposite effect.
It's good to hear you say that. How has the role of these devices changed in the last decade? Have we moved from novelty or past the experimental stage into true productivity?
Yeah, I mean, we've definitely passed the embryonic stages of growth. I mean, in terms of penetration rates, 3 out of 4 Canadians or higher in some urban centers have smartphones. We do know that there's about 1.8 billion smartphone users around the world. There's about 6.6 billion people that live around the world. So we still have 5 billion people that have to come on board. But don't forget, a lot of those people, live in poorer countries in Africa, Southeast Asia, so they don't necessarily have the telecommunications infrastructure. But they will one day. And when that happens, I think all hell's going to break loose. Because right now, the average office worker in Canada is getting 84 emails in a 24-hour period. And of those 84, about 8 are critical and useful to you. The other 90% is all kind of spam and CC and BCC and CYA and the guy from Nigeria wanting some cash and so on and so forth. So what I predict is that 84 emails a day today is tiddlywinks, and that theoretically in the next 5 to 10 years, that number is going to rise so significantly that we could potentially lose email as a potential communication vehicle because it'll just be abused.
So you think in the next decade there's just more of the same? Will we learn how to cope with this?
Well, and that's the whole point of the book. The last 4 chapters of the book basically provide prescriptive recommendations for people to filter through some of the crap to make sure that you zone in on what's useful to you. I mean, all you have to do is step back maybe 15 years ago to the year 1995 when, the internet started taking off. And when we first started sending emails to one another, that was commonplace. I mean, when you received an email, it was a celebration. It was, somebody wanted to talk to you. Like rockets would fly out of your computer, the pomp and pageantry, balloons would blow up. If you recall, they made a movie out of it. You got mail, right? That was a big event.
Yeah.
So, 5 emails in a day, and you were like a big kahuna in the workplace environment. And now we're already upwards of 80, 90, 100. What type of work environment are you going to have when you're upwards of 500, 600 emails in a day? Are you theoretically going to be able to do any work at all in 8 hours when you're spending 4 hours just, rifling through your inbox?
It's called Information Bombardment, Rising Above the Digital Onslaught. And, of course, Nick Bontis, Mac professor, is the author. Good for you, Nick. Congratulations.
Thank you very much, sir, for your time.